Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the September 20th Oyster River Cooperative School District Regular School Board meeting. First order of business is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? Heather? A second? Tom? All in favor? 7 in favor, and the student rep is in favor. Next is public comments. Any members of the public this evening? No? Okay. Approval of the September 6th regular meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve? Brian, a second? Heather, are there any changes to the minutes? Gianna?
Just a couple on page 5 of 6, paragraph under discussion 8. There's a sentence where it is, I gotta find it, I apologize. To add, say, including parents and students as stakeholders on the committee regarding the superintendent search, because it just says parents. And then to adjust the paragraph, and I'll send this to Karen, I haven't yet done that. I'm sorry, I moved in the wrong place here. I think that'll be good enough. That's it.
Any others? I have one very minor one also on page 5 under the discussion and action item. The NHSBA meeting on Saturday, October 14th will occur in Concord. It should be 10:30 to 2 p.m. instead of 11:30 to 2 p.m. All right, and with those corrections, all in favor? 7 in favor, and the student rep is in favor. Motion passes. Next is announcements, accommodations, and comments from the district. None tonight?
I think Becca's getting up.
Oh, sorry, couldn't see you.
Yes. Good evening, Rebecca Noe, principal at the high school. A couple dates, I've told them before, but I want to make sure everyone's aware of them. So all of our freshmen are going to the Brown Center, and that is September 29th or October 2nd. And we do half of the advisories on that Friday and the other half of the advisories on that Monday. And what it is a bunch of team building activities, time together with their advisory and their class, but it also fits in with our EPW curriculum. And so in the EPW, they're doing a lot of SEL and team building activities there. And so we continue that curriculum at the Brown Center at UNH. Our open house is October 5th. That's a Thursday, and we'll start at 6 p.m. I just want to make sure people know they do follow their students' schedule. And so over the loudspeaker, we'll come off and we'll tell them which class they're going to, what block it is. Before that, we have students fill out a schedule for their parents about who the teacher is, what the class is, and what room it's in. And we'll have NHS members around the building letting them know where to go and how to find those classes. But they do follow the schedule, so they would want to be there as soon as they could at 6 o'clock if they wanted to follow the whole schedule. PSATs for juniors are October 25th. And this is the set where juniors will sign up for those. They're voluntary. And so Ms. Karen will have more information coming out about those in a week and how to do that. But that's on October 25th. And then picture retake day. We just had pictures a couple weeks ago, but just so parents know, picture retake day will be October 27th. So I have a little while before that also. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Any other district announcements? Okay. Board announcements? Yes, Tom?
This is about agendas. I would hope that maybe in the next agenda we will appoint the committee to create the survey for the middle school, because we're kind of losing time, because we're already be in October, and then you're just setting up the committee. So I think at the very latest that should be on the agenda in October, the next meeting.
Other board announcements? Gianna?
Was this the appropriate time as discussed?
Board announcements.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to give folks a quick rundown of the Board of Education meeting that was about a week ago. I did attend. I did not attend as a school board member because I wanted to make sure I could make comments that were my own. It was very well attended. The vast majority of the people who were making comments against accepting PragerU as a Learning Everywhere program. I'm talking like 90%, plus about 450 pages of submitted testimony. I would say 400 of it was against. There was teachers, there was lots of other school board members there, and various other education groups were there, all objecting to it for dual reasons. One, like the one that we wrote about the fact that the curriculum really didn't fit a half a credit and wasn't thorough enough and it didn't have enough discussion, all the kind of things like that. And then the rest of them were talking about the fact that PragerU is an extremist group and that the stuff they had online wasn't appropriate for public education. It was all moot, which I knew going in. It was quite clear from the comments and the discussion at the Board of Education that the conclusion they had was a foregone conclusion because they were making comments that clearly meant that whatever people were saying had no meaning. So that was incredibly frustrating. The reason I bring this up is because this is something that we'll have to be looking at, and I will do my best to I'll pay attention as best I can and report back to everybody, is that this is kind of an ongoing concern that we will be having, I think, with the Learning Everywhere program, which really was proposed as an alternative to the ELOs, which we'll hear more about today. Because the problem is, which is what the NHSBA said a couple years ago, is that Learning Everywhere takes away local school board control, meaning that those courses are approved and we have to give them credit, but we have no control of whether or not we think it actually meets the standards or competencies or the ethos of our district. And this really showed that that's a true danger, because I think a lot of people wouldn't agree with the decision that was made. So I think it's something we need to pay attention to Learning Everywhere, and I think it also means that we need to pay attention to the edits that are happening with the 306 regulations going forward, because that includes Learning Everywhere. There's separate regulations on that, but it's addressed within the 306 regulations. So going forward, I think we need to pay attention to it more and see how we'll react to it regarding policy.
Any other board comments?
If I could just piggyback Gianna's comments. The issues that she raised were raised by this body, the School Boards Association. When Learn Everywhere was presented, we were concerned about what happened this week. And the 306 regulations, the School Board Association, and the Superintendent's Association have been very active in contributing. What those regulations look like today is significantly different than what they looked like a year ago. So in regards to the 306 regulations, I think that we've had a great impact, and that's because Fred Bramante, who lives in Durham, who's been in charge of this revision of 306, is really committed to listening to the state, and he's been going out throughout the state through the winter of last year, the spring of this year, and continues to do it this fall. So he's been very diligent in listening to teachers and educators across the state, and has carried our message, I think, as effectively as anybody back to the commissioner. And as a result, we're seeing the 306 regulations look significantly different than they did a year ago. So I just wanted to shout out to Fred and thank him for bringing integrity to that process and continuing to do so even to this day.
I have one additional comment, which is just that I was so excited. I got a Parent Square account, and I don't have a child in the school. So that was one of the things that I had said all along. If you're a community member who just wants to stay involved in the school, when all the changes were made in terms of ways to communicate so that community members could be a part of that. So thank you to Josh and Jen and everyone who's responsible for that. Okay, moving on, then, district reports, Assistant Superintendent.
Good evening. I just have one item to report. It's just a reminder to families that on October 6th, we have a teacher workshop day. On that day, we will have faculty engaged in suicide prevention training as well as other learning, including CPR and CPI. Thank you.
And that Monday is a holiday also?
Yes,
So
and the
four-day
Mondays,
weekend.
so it's a long weekend.
Superintendent's report.
So just in terms of me professionally, I was able to attend a superintendent's workshop in San Antonio, paid for by the sponsors. And it was one of the best workshops I have ever attended in my career. It was about 100 invited superintendents from across the country. We had great dialogue and seminar setups that were run by superintendents. One of the things that happened in this workshop that I've never seen before is they gave us a pre-survey to find out what our district needs are and interests were. And then there were probably 60 vendors, and they took the survey and tied you to vendors that were providing product related to your interests. And it made and then you met with them for about 30 minutes at the most. And it made the dialogue rich. Instead of feeling like you were being sold something, you were telling them about your district, what your district needs were, and then they would talk about their product. And one of the more interesting ones was related to tutoring. And this company has established a network of remote tutors. And when I explained to them what we were doing with our own tutors, they said, well, clearly we have nothing to offer you because you guys have really, stepped up and put tutors in place for your students. So it wasn't like hard to sell. It was more that kind of dialogue. And then the seminars were really super interested, led by superintendents. One was about, basically the political structures of the states that we're participating in. And, it's sort of sad to go back to Gianna's brief presentation, how many states have gone down the same path. And, this PragerU has gotten a foothold in Florida and in Texas. And so it's something that is growing. And I think that the biggest concern I have is these are not educators. This is just, the U stands for nothing other than he put a U at the end of his name. And so having unaccredited organizations provide credit in New Hampshire or other states really is offensive. And we spend a lot of time making sure that the people who are in front of our children are highly qualified. And now we're spending time putting options in front of children by people who are not qualified. So I'll leave that there. It was a really great conference, and thank you for the board for always supporting my professional growth. I would like now to invite Catherine up. Catherine will give us an update on our current COVID protocols, and if you were on the board last year, they'll sound very familiar.
So here we are, still talking about COVID. You all, I think, have what's been being put on or been put on the website for our updated protocols. There really isn't much different from the springtime. I think the big changes really, well, not even a big change, but again, just continuing to recommend the mask wear day 6 through 10, but we don't have any authority to enforce that. We just, encourage people to wear them 6 through 10. But other than that, we still have people connecting with the school nurses, parents, and staff members to talk about their symptoms and talk about their return date, so that practice is still in place. And we are still asking for that positive COVID test so that we can help people figure out either from symptom onset or positive COVID test date.
Thing I would add, Catherine, is we no longer have the authority as a school board to shut down school related to COVID. So the governor pulled that emergency permission away from us last spring. And so the only reason we can close school is weather or emergency related. Now, if we couldn't run school because we didn't have staff, then I would call the commissioner and say, we don't have enough staff to run the school. And in theory, he would be able to say, you have my permission to shut down school then, but we have to go through that hoop, and it's not guaranteed that he would say yes. You know, the other part of COVID times that we've hung on to that benefit our students is if a teacher gets COVID, say, you know, our Spanish teacher gets COVID and has to be out for 5 days, then he has the option of remote in his content, and we would hire a substitute to monitor his classes while he taught the content. So instead of pre-COVID, where we would bring in somebody who couldn't provide the content and basically hold fort for the teacher while they were out sick, one of the things we've hung on to is this idea that content can still be delivered by the specialist, the teacher we hired, and we bring in the substitute just to monitor the kids to make sure they're not climbing out windows or poking each other or doing other silly things that teenagers will do. So it's actually one of the best outcomes from COVID.
Yeah, it really, has worked well in many situations, so that's continuing. And I think the other thing, just related to what Dr. Moore said about school closing, is we still do have to report illnesses to Department of Health and Human Services, so that's how they track neurovirus and all those different viruses. And if there was ever a place where there was too many cases of any virus in a building, then they also can step in. So I remember my first year or two here in the district, we had one of our schools where there was a significant amount of neurovirus, and we were on the threshold of taking a pause and doing a cleaning. It didn't happen, but so they also monitor that based on data that nurses are required to submit. Yeah.
I heard today that apparently the free tests are going to be made available again for people to order. So, I think that might be helpful for families. And I don't know if that means, for example, the schools will be able to get more tests or.
So the tests that we had received, some of them started expiring, so we had to dispose of some of them, but we had gotten a huge allotment. Some are still okay. We're still offering out tests. Some insurance are still covering the purchasing of tests. Certainly if people are having a hard time seeking a test, our nurses are helping them find a test or get access to a test. But most families they have resources at this point. Yeah, and everyone's doing rapids, so.
How are COVID numbers at this point?
We're not tracking them like we
Okay.
used to. No, I would say that there's illness, but we've had lots of kids testing who are not COVID positive. There's other bugs going around. So I would say that, our normal colds and flus are going to be kicking up. Last year we saw the reintroduction of strep again. We took a pause on even strep. That seems to be kind of, picking up. I know that there's lots of recommendations coming out that we can all have been seeing related to vaccination and getting your updated boosters. The RSV new vaccination that's coming out or is out. So I think we keep encouraging people to check in with their healthcare providers about what's best for them. But we don't have large amounts of students or staff out. We're not at a place where we have felt worried about can we cover school or anything. We've been in good shape.
So Becca, can I put you on the spot? What's the first few weeks of school look like in terms of staff and student attendance? Just an impression, you don't have to have exact numbers.
We've had 4 or 5 teachers that have had COVID that had to stay
Are they participating in the remote in providing their content?
out. One of them is.
Okay.
And I think the others, they found out like on a Saturday, so the Saturday-Sunday counted. They might have been out for 3 days, back with a mask. Usually it's been the kids brought it home first, and then they end up getting it eventually.
And what kind of numbers are you seeing from the kids in terms of absenteeism?
We're not testing them, so I think our
No,
absentee.
just globally absenteeism,
Oh,
not related to
I
COVID.
can check for specific numbers, but it's not higher than any.
Okay, thank you.
One thing that I'd like to see if we could encourage actually would be if you have, if somebody has a cold, just to have it be totally okay to wear a mask. Obviously, we cannot mandate it, and that's fine, but it is something we know that decreases transmission of any respiratory illness. My kids went into school with a mask the other day because they had the sniffles. They tested negative for COVID and were feeling okay, but just being able to decrease transmitting it to their fellow students is a worthwhile endeavor. So I'd just like to make it kind of normalize masks a bit, that it's something that's a good choice for public health, if you're comfortable with it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Maybe next year I won't talk about it.
I can always hope.
Silly.
Business administrator? Okay. Student representative, Maeve.
We had a busy couple weeks. I'll start with seniors. The counselors came into advisory and talked a little about career and college planning for 20-ish minutes, and then we have options during the day to go for flex and learn more about applications for college specifically, because those deadlines are coming up. And then in the Writing Center, Mr. Baver, he had small college essay writing sessions, and he encouraged everybody just to write the essay, you know, whether you go to college or not, just to have in the back pocket. And then some sports wins. We have volleyball and boys soccer beat Co-Brown on Friday. Volleyball is undefeated, and the girls cross country placed first and boys placed third at the Bobcat Invitational. And then upcoming events, Manchester Invitational this weekend for cross country. And then Senate hosted a meeting for talking about mental health and planning a mental health panel for the spring. They held it last year, it was very successful, and they want to hold it again. And then seniors are planning Bobcat. It used to be called Mr. Bobcat, but it's a pageant show. And we decided to change it this year to be more inclusive, that anybody can join and participate in Bobcat. That's what I got.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for that change, Maeve. I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think it was a very antiquated concept.
Also, that mental health panel last year was fantastic, and if you have a chance to go this year, I recommend that you should. Hearing from the kids was really informative.
Finance Committee, Brian?
Nothing to report, but we are meeting next Wednesday at 6 p.m. If that's okay with Amy. Yep, okay.
Superintendent Search Committee, Heather?
All righty, so you all have the memo, and today we are looking to approve the structure of the screening committee so that we can start soliciting individuals to populate it. The list is the same as Denise put out in her May 2023 memo, which is consistent with what we did the last time we went through a search. And so at this point, if there are any questions, otherwise we'll be looking to adopt the structure.
Yep. Anybody? Tom?
A move to adopt the structure of the screening committee as indicated in this memo.
Okay, and Brian? Second, so that's Tom motion and Brian second. Any additional comments? All right, all in favor? 7 in favor, and student rep is in favor.
All right, and so the other little bit is there is a change to the updated schedule. And so, oh, so good. So we had everything locked down in this body on October 3rd. And I went and emailed the district and said, we're ready to go. We're going to do the in-person. We need spaces. We need this. We need that. We need them at this time. And we need them on October 4th. and I didn't catch the error until everything went out, and Denise emailed me Sunday morning and said, hey, wasn't that supposed to be October 3rd? So the horse is kind of out of the barn at this point. We have reserved all the spaces. We have publicized and advertised at the community level, at the teachers and the building administrators, and everybody has gotten an announcement already. And so I talked to Carolyn and NESDEC, and they were able to change their plans. And so we are moving the date of the in-person focus groups from Tuesday, October 3rd until Wednesday, October 4th. That conflicts with the school board meeting. So the only people that actually affects are us, and then folks who might be here in the audience. But otherwise, we weren't supposed to go to the focus group to talk anyway, since we were having our own workshop with NESDEC. So this would just be, we can't attend now because of the conflict. So, but everything else is set up, it's all advertised, all the spaces are locked, we're ready to go.
So I did talk to Dr. Morrison. I just feel like, I just don't feel it's right to have a school board meeting at the same time as a focus group, just because you never know. People might want to come to a school board meeting, you never know, and just not to have that conflict. So we talked about alternatives and basically have two possibilities. One would be that we could have an action-only meeting and start early, like from 6 to 7 on the 4th. Another possibility is moving the regular school board meeting to, we can't do it on Tuesday. I mean, I'm saying it backwards. Okay, or moving our regular school board meeting to Tuesday, October 3rd. So I wanted to see what other board members thought about those two possibilities, and if board members were interested in one or the other, or neither. I mean, we could just move forward with the conflict, but I just wanted to hear what people thought about the possibility of either of those two.
I'd rather move to 6 because I can't be here on the 3rd. I have my own board meeting. Yeah.
So what do people think about having a regular board meeting starting at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, October 4th, the regular board meeting?
If I could just jump in too,
Yes.
This is exactly the format we talked about doing in November and keeping it a business only, no major presentations, whatever has to get done will get done, and then, so we would mimic what we were thinking about doing in November.
Else?
I
Okay,
was just about to ask if we have a consensus to move it to 6 o'clock
yeah. Do we need?
on October 4th, yes. Yeah.
Is 5:30 going to be okay?
Almost saved you getting.
We can do 5:30, or we can have you come to the SAU office earlier during the day if it works for the two of you, rather than trying to, stack all of your meetings at once. Just come a little earlier, we'll have it ready.
Okay, with
I'm
that.
fine either way, yeah.
Okay, with that, then I'm going to make a motion to move our regular school board meeting of October 4th to start at 6 p.m. rather than 7 p.m., and it will be an action-only meeting. Can I have a second? Brian? Further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Motion passes. Thank you. And thank you, Heather, for all your hard work. It was a lot of work, and the flyers, the information was great, so hopefully we will have good turnout at those meetings, both the remote and the in-person. Was there anything else, Heather?
Nope. I think we have, we talked about the fact that we'll need the November 1st meeting to be of a similar structure so we can have the screening committee meeting number 1 afterwards. We have locked down an interview site for the screening committee interviews. So we have dates and spaces locked for that. And we have the 4 dates in November and December ready to go for final interviews. And so things are starting to fall in place. We'll have the focus groups and we'll have the workshop at the second October meeting with NESDEC to go over that. So we're chugging along.
Thank you. Unanimous consent. Looks like we only have one item on unanimous consent, so I assume we can kind of move forward with it. I'll make a motion to approve the nomination of the district truant officers for 2023-2024 school year. Can I have a second? Tom? All in favor? 7 in favor, and the student rep in favor.
Lisa, if I know it's unanimous consent, but I do want to state appreciation for all three communities and being willing to represent the truant officers in the district. Talking to colleagues, and they have a hard time getting truant officers. Our police departments, all three of them, step right up. So I just wanted to thank them.
Okay, next item is the advanced programming at the high school.
So tonight we're inviting Shannon Karen, who is our Director of Counseling at the high school, Sean Peschel, who is our ELO coordinator, and Adam Lacasse, who is our business teacher at the high school. This presentation came about because the board and the teachers, administrators have done a tremendous amount of changing over the decade. And a lot of the opportunities that exist today are a direct result of this body supporting changes and allowing us to provide what I would call stretching opportunities for our students. And it's also indicative of the choice model we have at the high school, and those choices begin at the freshman year and then move forward in a much more aggressive manner by the time the kids are juniors and seniors. So because we're not all been here for 10 years, thought this was an opportunity to bring everybody back up to speed with all of the different opportunities we've created for our high school students, and bring our parents and the community who are watching this up to speed as well, because we have an unusual high school in the sense that we give our kids so many choices, and so this is about the choices our kids have.
Couldn't have given a better introduction, so thank you. And thank you for having us tonight. So we are presenting on the student experience and all the ways that, or not all the ways, but many of the ways that we do try to enhance and individualize student education. So we do have a choice model, which means that students have a lot of different options and electives, and we work really hard on providing different electives for our students. And so, for example, students have pages of choices in our programs of study to meet their English requirement for graduation. So there are pages and pages of options for students to choose from, and we really want them to explore and take classes of interest to them, or that they're just curious about and they want to learn more about the topic and see if that is an area that they want to dive further in. Also, we do have student voice within those elective options, and that means that we have departments that will put out surveys each year. This year it will be science, last year it was social studies, asking students what topics they're interested in. And so through those surveys, we found out that students were interested in genocide studies, for example, world religions, and those became new course offerings for our students for this coming year. And so we will put out another interest survey for students with science this year and continue to grow our options so that we are expanding our course offerings and just designing courses that are meeting students' interests and what they want to explore. We really do encourage discovery, and we want to enhance and enrich discussions within classes. So we're also proud of our heterogeneous class structure. We don't level classes. We want students really engaging in their education based on their interests. And so that voice and the dynamic groupings are really something that we work hard to strive for.
Thank you very much for the time. My name is Adam Lacasse. I teach business and economics at the high school. When I started here, I worked with Kathy Stetson. We had an idea about how do we try to get college more affordable for our students and allow them to get ahead of the game, knowing that these costs are only going to increase over time. So thank Kathy very much for that and the help and the motivation. As you can see now with our offerings, they've expanded greatly over time, offering calculus, pre-calculus. Thank you, Lisa Hallback. Thank you, Bill Reeves. Thank you, Vivian Jablonski, Erica Cook, of course. I'm going to give a few shout outs today. Who's really stepped up the plate and offered all of these extensions for these kids. Not everyone's going to go to a 4-year college or a university across the United States. You know, it's very wise us to stay local. Take all of our options, look at the 2-year programs and see what they offer. Now with UNH, we've developed language in order to have these courses translate directly into UNH, into majors. So now students of mine can take Introduction to Business, Microeconomics, Macroeconomics, and that's 3 courses already on the way to getting them to that degree. If you add in calculus, pre-calc, not to mention all of the AP offerings we have, we're building a really strong foundation for these kids to be successful. Our student rep even had AP Economics last year, and hopefully maybe she could add something for us, but yes. So again, of course, I'd definitely like to thank Katie Johnson, of course, for helping us out. And this year we offered our first science class this year, environmental science. Well, John Bromley is joining the program we just got approved, so that's a great thing. That complements Celeste Best with her anatomy and physiology, which is run through Southern New Hampshire University. So we keep on adding these. And my last final shout outs, of course, to Shauna Horsley, Sean Kelly, and Jennifer Weeks, who offer English composition. So now we're really trying to motivate our students to kind of go for the rigor, go for not trying to pass a test, but demonstrating competency over a period of time. And that's why Running Start, now called Early College, is a perfect way to demonstrate their knowledge, prove to us. It's a shout out to my colleagues who have gone on and earned a master's degree in their area of interest. It's allowed them to become educators beyond Oyster River, whether that's at UNH, Great Bay, or other colleges. So it's really like a win-win for everyone, and that's why we're really here. And we're really excited. The program's growing, and thanks again for all of the support here on the board, knowing that it takes the whole village in order to get our kids to go there. And this is, of course, not all possible without the elementary teachers, the middle school teachers, and everyone else, the family and friends have just provided us with that extra support in order to get us kids to their final destination as quickly as possible with support and love, and of course, saving a few bucks along the way. So thank you very much.
I don't know how to follow that. We are fortunate to have a partnership with UNH, with the CATS program. CATS stands for Challenging Academically Talented Students. There are many options as students do go through their high school career and they take different courses, and maybe they've exhausted what we offer within our building. They have opportunities to apply to take college courses at the university. The first course that they take per semester is tuition free, which is very unique to our situation in our community with the partnership that we have with the university. So we do have many students who take advantage of that and just continue to enhance on their academic options. Accelerated math options is one that is very common, and that is because of a fortunate partnership and collaboration that we have, starting right down to the middle school with students being prepared with advanced level math skills that we have some 7th and 8th graders who come up to the high school. They're ready to take high school courses while they're in middle school. And so the high school, we work in collaboration with the middle school principals to get 8th and 7th grade students up to the high school and take courses with us, which means that when they start out as freshmen, they are taking upper level classes. They continue to expand through those math options. And then by potentially junior year, they've exhausted through Calc AP for Calculus A, B, and BC. They're ready to go to the college level and continue those courses. So we do find that to be most common with the courses that they're taking over at the university. Like I said, the first course they take per semester is tuition free, the unique agreement that we have with the university, but students can take a second course for a significantly reduced tuition rate.
AP courses that are offered at the high school, we do continue to expand on the rigor that we offer to students. New this year was pre-calculus. Again, Lisa Hallback and Erica Cook were approved to teach that this year and have grown already that program. I believe we have 4 sections of it this year. In addition, through our ELO, which you'll hear from Sean pretty soon about, if we don't offer something, we will try to create something for students. And so students who want an advanced opportunity, an AP experience through art, computer science, world languages, they can work with Sean to create ELO experiences. And this year we are working on a pilot after school for Mandarin Chinese because there was that interest for students. So we'll just continue to grow and continue to meet students where they're at and listen to what they want. And we are very fortunate and thankfully with the support of the board over many years that all of this has grown and we continue to grow.
Again, another way that we are expanding and enhancing the offerings that we offer at Oyster High School is that we, as you know, have a regional agreement with Dover, Somersworth, and Rochester to have our students attend their career technical programming over there. We've seen increased enrollments in those areas. For our students, right now, this year, we have 83 students going out to Career Tech. When I first arrived here 7 years ago, we had roughly 18-ish students going out, so it's an enhancement across the board. These programs provide students with industry-recognized credentials after their 2-year experience or 3-year experience. Also, Running Start College credit also is connected to the career technical education programs. As I mentioned, our enrollments are growing and increasing, which is a good thing, but it's also becoming a bad thing too, unfortunately, because it's growing in the region also. So now those seats are becoming more competitive to get into. So there are more wait lists happening this year. We do have increased enrollments of 83 students going, but we did have a handful, maybe 10 to 15 students that were waitlisted in the programs that they were looking at. Roughly, I want to say maybe 5 or so did not get in off the wait list. They were still stuck on the wait list type thing, and so they were unable to go after their career technical education opportunities. But again, kudos to the 3 centers for working with us to try to get as many students into the programs as possible. For example, automotive, it's offered at all 3 centers. So if Dover was full, we moved on to Somersworth. If Somersworth was full, we moved on to Rochester, so on and so forth. In the agreement too, it states that we send the students to the closest center with the program available, but the centers are very collaborative and working with us to put the right students at the right centers, in the sense that, you know, Rochester and Dover are larger communities and larger school districts, where Somersworth is a little bit smaller. So if a student's gonna be more successful in a smaller school environment, then we'd look at Somersworth. And so they kind of have that flexibility. If there are duplicated programs, you look at the individual student to individualize and personalize the experience for them where they will be most successful. The next slide here is the ELO opportunities. We have 5 different categories of opportunities for students to enhance and expand their foundational experiences they have at the high school. ELOs were not designed to replace or override or skip over what's offered at the high school. It's to expand and enhance upon what's being offered. So independent coursework would be along the lines of, if we don't have a course in the building, the student can create that course experience with competencies, working with a partner teacher or teacher mentor. That's how the AP offerings are being offered. We have teachers and teacher mentors that are become certified or approved of by the College Board to teach that curriculum with their approved syllabus. So that's how those computer science courses were taught by Kathy Stetson in the past. We have art now happening, 3 different versions of art taking place now at the high school too. And as Miss Karen had mentioned, the idea of the Mandarin Chinese is going to be coming up also. Advanced studies would be if we offer a course, so for example, Pottery 1 and Pottery 2. If a student wants to create a Pottery 3 experience, we don't offer Pottery 3, but we could create that Pottery 3 experience, again, coming up with competencies where it's student-driven, student designed, student-focused, creating those competencies, and also then creating the products that demonstrate mastery in those competencies. Career exploration is currently a non-credit-bearing experience. The 2 that I mentioned previously and the 2 at the end are credit bearing, but the career exploration currently is not. That is because it's mostly just going out for an informational interview or a job shadow, seeing a short period of time in the day in the life of the industry professional that they want to kind of shadow and see. We did, though, pilot this past year. A student was interested in going into education. She wasn't sure what area. She was kind of leaning towards maybe English language arts. She was leaning a little bit towards special ed. And so she ended up interviewing teachers, paras, administrators from all 3 levels within our district, so elementary, middle school, and high school. She also interviewed staff members at the SAU level and also visited a neighboring district and talked to their SAU administration too, to see what's like, what was their career pathway? How did they go from what they are to where they want to be, type thing. So that did become a credit-bearing experience because of all the time and effort that she took putting into it, not just time, but also the idea of comparing what's the life like of a paraprofessional in the classroom, a teacher in the classroom, a building principal in the building, and kind of interweaving what those collaborative efforts and how they work cooperatively with each other to make the system run and operate. Internships, very simply stated there, and then peer instructor, similar to a teaching assistant, but the peer instructor is designed for students who are thinking about going into the field of education, or students that see themselves as a content specialist. Maybe the idea of being a math whiz, a science guru, a history buff kind of thing that wants to help expand those other students' minds in the classroom to enjoy those subjects as much as they do. And this year we are seeing an increase in the peer instructor area. More students are kind of vibing with that, and also teacher mentors are bringing them on board to have those students working with them in the classroom. ELO-wise, we're currently at 28 ELOs that are up and running. We're not even halfway through the school year yet. No, not even, we're only days into the school year, but last year we had a total of 59 ELOs, so right now we're kind of halfway through where we were at the end of last year. We had 59 overall, and right now we have 28, so I'm foreseeing the numbers to increase as the year goes on. Thank you.
No, we're done. Actually, that was it. So we're ready.
Okay, questions. I have 2. First is just a simple, are the credits typically like half credits, full credits?
Very good question. So the traditional Oyster River High School courses are a half year, half credit, full year, full credit. With the ELOs, the variable of time is actually erased. We don't even look at time. It's all based on the number of competencies. So 4 to 5 competencies is a half credit. 8 to 10 competencies is a full credit. Sometimes students walk in my door saying, I want to go through the full credit experience, because they're looking at the number that they want to go after, but they do have maybe a difficult time coming up with those 8 to 10 competencies. So I still get to take a step back. Let's look at 4 to 5 for a part 1, and a new set of competencies for a 4 to 5 competencies for a part 2, and that's how you can earn your 1 credit overall if you want to look at it at the credit level. Also too, if students are working on a half credit experience with those 4 to 5 competencies, they may start today, and they may not end up wrapping up until June. So a whole year has gone by. Since they're only, in air quotes, only working on 4 to 5 competencies, they're still going to earn only the half credit because that's how long it took them to work on that, that experience. And again, I tell students too, because the variable time is erased, if life gets hectic and busy, sports, clubs, activities, traditional high school, family responsibilities, the ELO can always take the back burner. Talk to your partner teacher, talk to your community mentor, community partner, talk to myself, and we can put that on the back burner for now and have your traditional courses and traditional life kind of balance out and keep on going. What typically ends up happening, though, is the opposite takes place, where the students really engage in the ELO, they're pushing that full steam ahead, and the traditional stuff may fall a little bit behind. But again, we balance it all out, work with the students to try to bring them up to speed with everything and kind of across the board. Yeah, so again, variable of time is erased, all competency-based.
And then going back to the CTE, how was it determined who was on the wait list? Was it a first come, first serve type of situation?
It's a bit of that. So it is a first come, first serve. It's an online application that students fill out. So whoever can get it filled out, submitted early. And then there's also a follow-up of the students do their portion of their application, pretty much just choosing which program they want to go towards. They have a first choice and second choice. So some students may not have gotten into their first choice, but they get into their second choice option. The centers also look at the students' grades, making sure they're on track for graduation, looking at their attendance, making sure they're attending our school, and so we can trust them to attend their school, and also what their discipline or office discipline referrals look like. Again, if they're following all our rules of being safe to self and others, we're hoping they'll be able to be safe and self to others in the other building too, so a little bit of that trust factor. So those are kind of like the paperwork stuff, and then we then have the students go over to the centers for the block of time that it's currently being offered. So for example, if you're applying to Health Science 1, you go over to Dover for Health Science 1 for that block, you meet with the teacher, have like an interview, air quotes interview, where the student is able to see how motivated, how interested, how invested that student is in that career field, in that pathway, and trying to find out the passion from the student too. And so that's kind of how they bring to life that paperwork of the application.
Sean, can I follow up to
Yes.
Lisa's question? Is there any pattern to the kids who are waitlisted? Is it a particular course or courses that you find that is the course that they regularly get waitlisted on?
Good question. This was the first year we actually experienced the big hit of the wait list. The popular programs that we're seeing, that we've kind of seen across the board, are the traditional ones of automotive, health science. Those are the ones that typically have a lot of students applying to them And then in turn, we have 3 automotive programs to pick from. We have 2 health science programs to pick from. So the programs that are popular are expanded. What we're starting to see, though, is that with all 3 centers being renovated recently within the past, 5 years or less, the newer programs are becoming popular now. So like sports medicine was new, that's becoming popular and only limited seats. One good thing of having that wait list is that it helped enforced Dover to have that part-time teacher go full-time. So now that they are able to bring in more students because the teacher is now a full-time teacher. Looking at career technical education teachers, all the centers run on a 4x4 block system. So teachers teach 3 out of 4 classes a day. So typically in a strong CTE program, that teacher's course load is 2 sections of the first year and then 1 section of the second year. So you have roughly, numbers-wise, 2 classes of 20. So that first level, you have 40 kids vying for only 20 spots the second year. So even though you got into the first year, it doesn't guarantee you going back for the second year. But again, with sports medicine, it was 1 section of year 1, 1 section of year 2. They've now expanded that to now offering more. They're also offering more pathways. So for example, either taking sports medicine 1, health science 1, or what's the other one? Sports medicine, health science, or fire science, yes. Either taking health science 1, sports medicine 1, or fire science 1, those career pathways can get you into EMT as your year 2 experience. So you have then 3 different programs going to that EMT slot. So they are diversifying and they're trying to have multiple options to get into where students want to go. But again, it comes down to staffing and the availability of seats and so forth. So yeah, the new welding, for example, welding is new over in Dover. It's a popular program. A lot of students want to get into that field because it's pretty much a 6-figure field upon getting certified. However, it's also very expensive to run a welding program, to have all the supplies. So they're trying to balance the need and the demand, but also the dollars and cents of running the program too. So
the reason I asked that question, Sean, is we've been really aggressive over the years about providing opportunities for kids. And to some degree, I feel like Oyster River is the odd man out, if you will, in relation to Somersworth, Rochester, and Dover all having CTE centers. Correct. And we don't.
Correct.
And I know that's part of the nexus of Adam's developing program was to make sure our kids had opportunities. I'm wondering if there's not another opportunity here, because I know that in some regions of the state, high schools that don't have CTEs connected to them have started requesting mini versions of the CTEs being embedded in their high school.
Yes, correct.
So that's why I was asking you, is there a pattern to the courses, and the courses that you laid out could possibly be taught here and taking the pressure off the wait list? Just a thought for future growth of these programs and opportunities for our kids. You know, if you think about it, Dover's kids just sign up for their master schedule and they are already in the CTE. Same happens at Somersworth and Rochester. So it would be interesting for us to look and see whether there's certain programming that we could offer here. And maybe we can take waitlisted people from other schools. Just a thought.
Totally. And just to piggyback on that too, with health science be one of those kind of sought after programs. Last year, one of the ELO opportunities we had was there was a state grant for 300 students to get their LNA certification for free. And so in our region, it was statewide, but yet our Seacoast region of ELO coordinators had the highest enrollment. And we had maybe 15 students last year get their LNA license through that free opportunity. So, and that's one of the benefits of the health science programs. You can get your LNA license. So we're trying to see what we can do without offering it, like Dr. Morris said.
I also think that's an important point you're making, Sean, in relation to the kids who go to the CTE centers getting, they're taking the assessments that they would take if they were going into that field. So if they're going to become an apprentice in a plumbing program, they take the same assessment at the CTE centers that they would if they were doing it with an independent plumber. And that's true for all of these courses that are being offered, that kids can graduate with certificates and put them in a position of working with professionals and getting their own licenses. So it's an incredible opportunity for our kids. I just wanted to mention too, by the way, that Sean was the ELO Teacher of the Year several years ago.
And 22.
Has really developed our program to be as rich and diverse as it is today. We're very fortunate to be able to recognize him for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Morris, for that. And also, too, thank you for your support financially for you as the board, watching the dollars and cents, but also for the communities providing their tax dollars to have this happen. Because we do there is a tuition attached to the CTE programs for our students to attend. But again, thank you for your generosity.
Sorry, after all that, I don't want to ask you another question.
No, it's all good.
This is kind of regarding the independent coursework aspect of it. I know that the intent is for it to be supplemental to the stuff that we have. But I do have a question of whether or not a student would be able to construct a class that fulfilled the competencies of an already extant class. The one that popped into my mind was something like PE, which we don't call PE anymore. It's called something else.
Yep, EPW, yeah.
Would be whether or not if you had a student athlete who had been participating in another sport that was year-round, would they possibly be able to construct a class with another teacher as a substitute for a class that's required?
Good question. I appreciate you asking that. Currently, all the ELOs that we're offering are elective-based ELOs. None of them meet the requirement, like graduation course requirements, but it can meet the elective category, if that makes sense. So that in the area of EPW, it is a required course for graduation, so we do require the students to take the Oyster River version of that course. So that's something to replace what we currently are offering. But thank you for the question.
Furthering your question, Gianna, outside of the ELO concept, all of the content at the high school is set up with competencies. And we've had the discussion since Todd was principal and Suzanne was principal about whether opportunities that students take outside of our high school, you used an example, I'll use another one. We have the rowing club down in Newmarket, and we have kids who spend years in ballet, and we have kids who spend years in karate. Can they, right now they cannot document or get approval for their physical activity. That is a conversation that actually resides with the local school board. So if a conversation around opening up opportunities outside that can be documented through our competency is something the board is interested in, it is a discussion that can be had.
I have a question about the CATS program. Is that something that is strictly academic, or could, say, a music student go and take ear training or like a basic conducting course?
They absolutely could, and so they have to apply for the CATS program, be accepted in based on academics, and then the course that they are applying for, that request goes to the department. And so then it's up to that department. And so if it is a music student who is looking to expand, then they would likely either reach out, interview, maybe even audition for
Our department or the school, the UNH?
university,
Okay.
university department.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have one more question about the electives, and this might not be the right spot for it, but our last student representative, Paige, when she left, spoke about including sophomores more into the elective process and how their loss was felt and the benefit to everybody having more younger kids in the electives. Is that something we can look at for next year?
I think that's probably a conversation for a
Yeah,
different
like I
time.
said, I'm not sure if this is the right spot for it, but I just don't want it to be forgotten.
So that came about through COVID. So in part, through COVID, the school couldn't be split. And so, right, so that's how, but what we found in the last couple of years, and not just here at Oyster River, but when I talk to principals and other educators across the state, kids coming back in after COVID, they're missing skills. And so what our teachers have done, and actually there were some emails that we had about this topic too, because it happened with social studies, the skills that they're now teaching in those 10th grade classes are to help them with skills they need for after graduation. Everything is moving towards vision of a graduate. But as the kids are coming up from middle school and the kids who went through COVID, they're missing a lot of those, whether it's also SEL, it's executive functioning, it's managing themselves in a classroom. The first year when we came back was my first year as principal. What I was hearing from teachers, kids couldn't stay in a classroom for more than 20 minutes. And they were getting up and leaving and couldn't be there, even though activities were changing. So it's all of those things, but then teachers have spent hours and hours, PD time in the summer, building this new curriculum. So it's engaging, it's rigorous, and the skills being built are skills that are necessary for our kids upon graduation.
Yep, I agree with all that, and she did mention that it came from COVID. Yeah. Wouldn't that, I don't want to say kind of level out, but as the kids who were affected most by COVID go through and graduate, or would we be able to get back to a program where we could involve more?
So I think we can always look at that, but I think what ends up happening is every summer teachers go back and look at that curriculum, and so the curriculum is actually evolving with the kids. And so they've put all this time into now, and it's choices. So sophomores, instead of taking like essentials for freshmen, they now have 2 different classes to choose from as sophomores, and it's based on interest. But those classes were also developed out of the electives that most sophomores were trying to get into. Because in that elective system, what Suzanne and Heather Mackinoff found was that seniors and juniors are the ones who they get priority. They are closest to graduation, they get the classes they want first. Most sophomores are actually being pushed into specific electives. And so what we then did was we created 2 classes based on the electives that they were mostly getting, but also gave sophomores opportunities with 5 other English classes. So while they're taking one of the 2 sophomore English classes, there are 5 English electives that they could also take if they wanted to add an English to their schedule.
I just want to say, because when we talk about this, I just want to make sure that people realize that we're really only talking about a change to one department, because for the social studies department, it's a requirement for kids to have a full year of U.S. history. So they have to take that anyways, whether it's US 1 and US 2 or the survey, the full survey course that's just United States history. So that's really no change. The difference would be just the one course in the English department, which would be the sophomore year. That's the only true difference to that piece. Otherwise, the requirements have been structured in a way where we just, instead of having US 1 and US 2, it's now just US history.
If I just piggyback this as well, I met with the English department last year, and this is the issue that they wanted to talk about, and it really turned into an incredibly great conversation related to opportunities for the sophomores, and a very, very divided department as to whether they wanted to return to pre-COVID options or maintain the post-COVID options. So there was no consensus in the group, and what Noe and I committed to is continuing to have that conversation with them as we go through time and collecting data and so forth. So nothing's in perpetuity, but the idea that we would continue to have conversations we committed to, and we will continue to do that, Matt.
I will just say that my biggest concern with it was, just as we have, and you spoke to students who are taking high school math classes in middle school, that those students whose interests and skills really lie with the language arts, you know, with English and that whole area, that they had that opportunity to also advance. And I understand it's different because it's not, you know, straight like, obviously concepts like math, but still just, you know, I know, and this is going back many years, when my son was in high school, and for example, I remember the British Lit always being considered one of those, you know, top classes, and I just hope that students who truly are, you know, that's where their talent lies, have that opportunity to advance, just as those students who are more maybe math and science oriented have an opportunity to advance as well.
I can speak as an ex-English teacher, although I don't know if I want to put the X on there. It is a little bit different with writing skills, right, or reading skills. And so I can say that going through college, I have an English degree. I didn't actually major in education first. It's how in-depth you go on a topic and the types of primary sources that you're using. And so our classes really do prepare kids for what they're going to do in college, but also in college, you're not actually getting into those classes until your junior and senior year. So they would take like what the college would consider a English 101, which they're actually doing those skills when they're with us in the high school.
And on a completely different topic, Shannon, there is always this misnomer, talking about freshman options, that all freshmen have to take phys ed. Can you talk about what options freshmen have tonight, so if people listening know that there are other options in the freshman year?
Yes. So ninth graders do have the least amount of options. That is true. And it is because we want them to come in and build those strong foundational skills for future years. They do have to take Essentials of English. They take World Cultures. They take Next Gen Biology, which is a graduation requirement. These are all graduation requirements. We do strongly recommend that they take EPW, and for the most part, most ninth graders do take EPW. And then they're also taking, many times taking a language. If they're interested in a music class or an art class or a computer class, then, and there becomes conflicts, then we can work with them. And that is something where we instituted one-on-one appointments with the high school counselor and all 8th graders last year to talk about what their goals are and what their interests are, and to balance out, yes, there are classes that we do tell you you have to take as a 9th grader to build those skills. But if there are other elective options like language, art, music, specifically music, because we were trying to build that music program, but then there's some singleton options, so then there became conflicts, more conflicts with those. There's only one option for chorus, and so there's less flexibility to move those classes around. So that's where we were seeing those conflicts, that they would work one-on-one with the counselor to then delay EPW to the sophomore year. But that does become that individualized conversation, and again, where we are trying to individualize student experience.
I think that also speaks to Gianna's question. If we're strongly recommending they take a path, what we're actually doing is also strongly recommending they not take a path. So I think that both Suzanne and Rebecca and you have tried to craft the program of studies a little bit more flexibly than the perception that strongly recommends you should versus here are your choices. And I think that's really what happens with incoming freshmen, is strongly recommends precludes others that are not strongly recommended. And that interferes with other programs of interest to students.
And I do think that our enhancement on the 8th grade transition process and the counselors getting down to the middle schools more often is also going to hopefully help the comfort level in approaching those conversations and those conversations and in those appointments with the counselor, for the student to not feel like it's assumed that I have to do this so I can't speak up, because we also want to encourage an enhanced student voice. And so as they build that comfort, we want them to take opportunities to have the conversation. It's only a 5-minute one-on-one appointment, but they can get a lot covered in that if the student says, I really, really want to try. I want a language, I want a music class, I don't know how to fit this in, and to work together.
I just real quick want to say thank you to all three of you. All of these opportunities, from my personal experience, has led to some really manic but exciting and engaged conversations, and it's great to see. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And just in terms of this presentation, I want to say that what you've heard tonight is unique to Oyster River. This is exactly why our high school is so attractive to our families. The basis of the program being choice, and then as the children go forward, the plethora of choices they have to define a program based on their interests by the time they graduate. You will not normally find this model in a public school. And it's a credit to the history of this district. It's a credit to our teaching staff. I think Adam did it the best by going through the litany of, I want to thank so-and-so, and I want to thank so-and-so, and I want to thank so-and-so. I think that we also need to be thanking progressive administration at the high school over the last dozen years to support these changes in our curriculum, and recognize that these changes were possible because of the change in master schedule and the work that you all approved as a school board. This didn't happen overnight. This is really I would call it a bit of a miracle in public education, to be able to support our students in ways that they want to be supported. And, right down to insisting that algebra be opened up to 7th and 8th graders. If that had not occurred a dozen years ago, we would not have AB and BC calculus. We would not have pre-calculus. We would not have AP statistics. We would not have AP economics. because those kids were able to start their math journey earlier. All of those courses, that slide where they had all the boxes up there, all of that didn't happen a dozen years ago. That's all because of buy-in from the faculty and support by the administration at the high school level to build this type of program for our kids. It was a choice model, but it was a limited choice model. Now, you know, really, it's, if a kid can dream it, Sean's there. And so it's really an unlimited possibility for our kids as we go through time. And the support of our community and why our high school has such a great reputation is right there in the slideshow tonight. So as Matt said, thanks to the three of you, but also thanks to every single high school staff member and administrator who's touched this program over the last dozen years.
So I had questions about the early college dual enrollment and AP differentiation.
All right, so I do teach AP Economics. So in that offering, we actually kids can choose a certain pathway which is for them. I've been asking these kids over the last few weeks saying, what are your goals? Like, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? Do you know yet? And that gives them some options. That means that maybe the school that they want to go to is rigorous, extremely rigorous, and therefore they might need to score a 5 or a 4 on an AP exam. That might be different, given another choice for a student who might be knowing that they want to go to UNH, lovely school, that now we have a pathway where they don't necessarily have to pass a test, right? They can just demonstrate their competency through one of their teachers. And that kind of just allows them that smooth pathway and transition in there. Now, those are all housed within that same curriculum. So I have my AP kids right here. I have my Running Start kids here. I also have just kids who are just taking the class because they enjoy it. So it's an inclusive classroom. We have kids on all different skills and abilities levels. It's really, I have kids who are just there. Someone said, "I'm here for you, Lucas." I'm like, all right, well, let's try to dial it up a little bit more. So trying to add that rigor and just provide an option for each kid. We know that some kids are just not really great test takers, but if you give them the time, the energy, and all that other motivation in order to demonstrate that, well, that's just as good for me as someone who really wants to get a 5 on the AP exam. So not all of our classes are structured this way, but my hope is in the future that we'll have more of this. And just, again, providing opportunities for kids to reach their goals.
So sort of distilling a bit, so the early college courses, the instructor has to have a master's degree and is then certified by UNH in order to be credit bearing, and that only transfers to UNH. So if a kid doesn't go to UNH, that early college course doesn't count for anything, which is where the AP
let me clarify a little bit further. I just UNH because I'm alumni there. But our early college, used to be called Running Start, now transfers over to 175 different colleges across the United States, and that number is also growing. That's available on the Running Start or dual early college website. And our faculty are partnered with Great Bay Community College. So our teachers are actually go through the whole screening process. Typically, with many degrees, a master's degree in the area of their study is preferable, but we all know that some majors and stuff, like say English, right? Not every English teacher is going to go out there and get a master's degree in literature or something. But they take enough coursework over the time in order to prove this competency through Great Bay, and they were approved through there. Also, or art. So our teachers or our professors could create a catalog of their work, and then that is another way to demonstrate it. So it really depends on the area of interest. So through there, the credit actually is awarded through Great Bay Community College, and then that credit is transferred to one of these 175 different schools.
Thank you for clarifying.
And if I may just give one final shout out, on October 2nd and October 3rd, Great Bay is going to be coming here and assisting our students and teachers for the registration process. And then they'll also be available on our open house night on October 5th to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Is that the early college registration?
Correct.
Oh, it's okay. The dual, oh, go ahead, Sean.
The community college system is of New Hampshire, so the CCSNHU or CCNH is currently rebranding. So it used to be Running Start, where courses offered at the high school, with the high school teacher being certified by the college. Early college was when the student would leave our campus and go to the college campus and take the course at the college campus with the college professor. And then they had eStart, which is like the online version of those college courses being taught by the college professor just virtually. So with the rebranding, it's now going to be early college at your school, on campus, or online. So it's all going to be early college. Just is that have 3 different names? It's going to have 3 different like hyphens after it. If that makes sense.
That was my next question on dual enrollment. Which schools do we have the dual enrollment program with? And then how does that work out for daytime structure? And do most of our kids go to do that in person or online?
I'll jump in. So dual enrollment also is terminology that's similar and different. Dual enrollment is a term that Southern New Hampshire University uses. So same thing, so Celeste Best is offering a dual enrollment, anatomy and physiology, but it's the same thing as early college at your school. So again, it's the term, that's where it's being offered and where it's being taught. Some states use the word concurrent enrollment because you're enrolled in like the college course and the high school course at the same time. So it's all meaning the same thing, unfortunately. We have education has all these different words for the same thing. It's oddly a thing that we have in our field. Does that answer your question, Heather? Yes or no?
So,
sorry.
Yes, but it made another
Yes,
one
but.
generate.
Oh,
so,
sure.
Okay, so
Get
Sarah,
that
I
every
don't
time.
have a high schooler yet, so I'm trying to figure this out before she gets there.
It'll change by the time she arrives.
I know. You guys are evil that way.
Just letting you know. Don't waste time now because it's going to be something later. It's
So-
already changed. I think I just got a memo on my email.
The early college and the dual enrollment are similar
Same.
on the on-campus side because it is, but just 2 different degree granting institutions.
Correct.
So one of them is Great Bay and the other one is SNHU.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So do we have kiddos that pick up and go take college classes at these community colleges and then get high school credit for that? And how does that work out?
Good question. We've had, in my experience, Ms. Philippon, I think 1 or 2 that I'm aware of. Yeah, so it doesn't happen as often. UNH, the CATS program, they're going over to UNH because it's so close that the travel time is not an issue. It's nice that we have blue and white days that are aligned with the middle school for that, 7th and 8th grade coming up to the high school, so on and so forth. Unfortunately, newsflash, the world doesn't work in blue and white days. They work on a thing called Monday through Friday. So with that being stated, when classes are offered on the college campus on a Tuesday and a Thursday, you have to block out the blue day and white day time frame that mimics. So it does, we will do our hardest to make it work and have it happen. We do the same thing with CTE because it's, all different bell schedules at different centers, but we would make it work for the student if need be type thing.
So typically, if they're going to go to campus, they're going to do it through the CATS program, and they still have the same blocking out blue and white.
Yeah, and yes, correct, yes. And if students were if Great Bay were to offer evening classes, our students would easily go to that because outside of the school day. I also want to give shout outs to my mentor teachers that also do work with the ELO students too. I don't have exact names, but like Mr. Lacasse has, but our mentor teachers are the ones working with those students to kind of guide them, being kind of you think of a bowling alley or bowling lane, the bumpers along the edge of the mentor teacher, the ball is the student going to get down to the end. It might be a straight shot or a zigzag, but it will hit those pins. And Gianna, back to your question about offerings of courses. Some school districts are using ELOs as a pilot way to offer new classes. So they'll try it out with a student. If it was successful, hey, I'm going to offer this as a new course then for the whole student population. So it's ELO personalized for that individual student, but it can grow into an elective course school-wide. And we actually have it's interesting, last year we had a student who worked with Kara Sullivan with Lit in the Land. Kara Sullivan designed that course a while back. She took a sabbatical for a year to redevelop it a while back. But this student then worked with her to redevelop it once again. So new readings, new offerings for different levels in the classroom to get the same concept across. We currently have a student that's planning an ELO that's combining math and English together in the area of data and reporting that data and explaining that data and writing about the data. So it's going to be interesting how that's going to be going with Mr. Kelly and Ms. Cook. So we'll see how that comes.
We good?
I have one last
Oh,
thing.
one more.
Wait,
Okay.
I'm sorry. You guys got me.
Is it? I don't know who it's for.
It's about cats.
Okay.
So, if I did not want to take calculus through Running Start or take AP Calc, could I take calculus through CATS and have it count as one part of my math requirements for graduation, or basically actually just one, have it count for graduation?
The CATS program is mostly utilized through after exhausting the options that are at the high school. So unless there's a conflict in the schedule that you could not take it with us, the CATS application is asking what courses you have already exhausted. So we're typically not using the university CATS courses towards graduation requirements. They are electives.
So saying that, just clarifying, if a student has met their high school math requirements, they can go to the CATS program for an elective.
If we don't offer the course, so it's exhausted our offerings. So a lot of students are using the math courses at the CATS program because they have exhausted. They've gone through our highest level of calculus, and so they're going on to take higher level calculus.
If they wanted to take DiffyQ because they already took calculus, they could take it at the university because obviously we don't offer it.
Yes.
Dr. Mercer, I heard your question right. Like, so example, we exhaust out at AP Calc. If a freshman took AP Calc, what do they do for the rest of the math credits? Can that then count? I would say the UNH courses would then count for those math credits to meet the number of math credits required to graduate. So they've exhausted, yes, but so which X gives them access, but yet they still have 3 more years to go, so they could.
Thank you for clarifying.
No, you're welcome. Now we hear questions. A lot of questions being. Oh, it's all good. No, it's all good. Just
You know where to find us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so going on to our policies for first read. I do have one suggested change for the sabbatical leave, but first I'm going to turn it over to Dan to because I know you had some things you wanted to say, but before we get to, I did have one thing to add to that one.
Thanks, Denise. Just before I forget, in your packet, the policies are incorrectly listed for second read. So everything you say, and guys, correct me if I have this wrong, but my recollection and my notes say that policies IHAM, JJIBA, GCBD, and JLCE are all up for first read tonight. Okay.
And they're first read on the agenda also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just in your packet, don't get confused that they're up for second read and adoption. Just a procedural thing I want to highlight. We, with Matt's help in particular at our last meeting, which was last week on the 14th, realized that a policy change that we had implemented several years ago, we just haven't emphasized, especially for those of you who are new to the board or relatively new to the board. So something we implemented a while back is basically just a simple invitation to all members of the board that when you get an upcoming policy committee agenda, you are invited essentially to submit suggestions, ask questions for consideration at that upcoming meeting. So this could be as simple, and I would also emphasize, please submit those directly to Jim and Wendy. They will convey those to the committee. They could be a simple question that, for example, Jim could answer for you, and that would answer whatever confusion you might have. Or it could be, for example, Michael on several occasions when he was on the board submitted suggestions for policy changes. So, you know, a paragraph, for example, or something like that for consideration at the next committee meeting. So it's not an obligation, it's just an invitation. It's an opportunity for all members of the board. You don't have to be on the policy committee to participate in the policy review and modification process. Did I explain that clearly? Any questions? Okay, thanks. So And I also would invite any of you who think that this process of reviewing a recent policy committee meeting could be better, please just let me know. Just in the interest of time, I don't want to go through the minutia. We review these policies on a sort of a chronological basis. A lot of the changes, for example, we have a standing process where we're reviewing all policies for pronouns. So if you pick up any of those that we missed, please point them out to us. And if you would like more detail in these reviews, please just ask, and we'll do our best to clarify anything. So, policies up for first read tonight. IHAM, health education and exemption from instruction. A fair number of changes, but nothing's truly substantial, just more modifying the language. Spectator and parent expectations. This is a new policy based on a presentation that Andy Lathrop and the students did for us several meetings ago. This is largely a reflection of their work with some minor modifications by the committee. It is we decided that the best way to tackle it would be to add it as a new policy, as a JJIB, which is a standing policy, which I believe, guys, that's also for first read. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. We reviewed but made no significant changes. Therefore, it's not a first read. So just to mention that we reviewed the standing policy. We are adding JJIBA based on the work that Andy and the students have done. And then there's an affiliated R, which is new, so that's up for board review tonight. Sabbatical leave. Denise, do you want to jump in on that?
So based on previous observations about that there would be sometimes applicants that wanted half year, and the way it was worded, they could only be awarded to 1 full year and 1 half year. So that's been changed to be able to have up to 2 half year or a 1 year and a half year. The change that I'd like to make after I saw the revised wording is I do think we need to make sure that we still have the part about if it's a half year, that it's, where did I write my note here? A full year is still at half salary. So I would like to suggest at the end of that first paragraph where the new language is sabbaticals may be granted for 2 half year or 1 full year and 1 half year, to add a sentence that says a full year sabbatical will be at half full salary. So just kind of putting that language back into there so that it's clear.
I don't see any problem with that. Jim, do you have any?
No, that's current practice, so I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Okay, and that's something that Tom, with his work on the sabbatical committee over the years, had brought to our attention, that it was somewhat constraining for the committee to only have the option of issuing a full year and a half year, or some combination of the two, when interest among the applicants seemed to suggest that having the option to do 2 half years was more appealing to a lot of the applicants. Okay, sure.
Matt reminded me at the beginning of the meeting that if you don't turn off your microphone, you will get feedback in the recording. So just when you're not talking, make sure it's off, because I was just hearing some pushback on the mic. So I don't know if somebody's mic was on.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone see anything that we may have missed? Suggestions for changes?
And just to remind, on a first read, that's what it is. It's not the finished product. So if you left tonight thinking, oh, I meant to ask that question, you certainly have the ability to do so. Contact me or Wendy. And then if you have suggestions between this read and the second read, get those to us in writing, and we'll make sure that they're presented to the full committee at the next meeting. So first read is really about announcing that we're going to talk about these policies. And then you've put it out there for a couple of weeks, giving the general population the notice that you're going to talk about these policies. The second read is then you've put it out there, everybody knows you're going to talk about it, you're going to take action on it. There is the rare occasion where the board will do first and second read in the same evening. I think in our time together, it may have happened twice. So the normal process is we announce we're going to talk about it, 2 weeks' time, we come back to it. And there's plenty of time to modify in between and even when we get to the second read. So it looks like it's okay tonight, and then you get to two weeks out and you're thinking about it, and I don't know if I'm ready for this. Then just say it at the next meeting, and we can send it back to policy if it's a significant amount of change, or we can just make the change that evening if it's minor.
I know we're not supposed to comment necessarily, vote on documents and forms, but I just would like to suggest possibly that somebody take a look at the form itself, the questions on the new version of the form. For example, 2D says, how does the work align with the scope of your role? Is it unique and beyond the scope of their role? Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, just as a question. And also, like, when I was on the sabbatical committee, I was concerned that you're asking somebody in one semester to make a big change in programmatic change that affects the district. And I would like to just, I think the focus of a sabbatical is primarily to enhance what you can do as a teacher. And I would love to see a question like, how would this enhance your ability to educate students at Oyster River? Because it kind of sounds like you're supposed to make this big programmatic change in a sabbatical of 3 months. And so we're those are just ideas based on my experience, because I don't think because I think that the sabbatical should be to enrich yourself as a teacher. At least that's UNH, that's pretty much the way we viewed it. Not necessarily to make this big change in the English department at UNH. So I just throw that out there, okay?
Yep. Thanks, Tom. We actually did, to some degree, discuss in general terms what you're getting at, and I think we are in agreement that there is sort of being able to demonstrate some sort of grandiose impact in that short a time is perhaps unreasonable, and that there's value in the personal development piece. But there's also, I think, an expectation in the community that is invested in the school district that the applicant demonstrate how the sabbatical contributes to the school system. Does that make sense? And guys, I'm paraphrasing. Did I? Okay.
And just piggybacking what you and Tom are saying, I think Tom's question, the way he phrased it, actually is supportive of the conversation we had. So, how does this? I think Tom said, how does this sabbatical enhance the way that you teach so that it improves your program for students? Would be a district objective, as opposed to saying, how does this enhance you as a person or as a professional? I think tying the students in aligns with our conversation at policy. And I think you can still do, the Chris Hall kind of grandiose thing, but if, Kara Sullivan came in and said, I want to do this because this is going to enhance my program for the kids, I think that makes a lot of sense as well. So I think that they're complementary.
I agree. And Tom, just getting back, because I think you're right. We didn't pick up on 2D, the form. I think it's worth changing that. Do you have something in mind that would better ask that? Because
I think
the grammar's one issue.
Yeah, he gave it to us, Dan, and we'll just play around with it and have it ready for the next one. Okay, so I think it's worth, and just as an example, those are the kinds of things that are worth tweaking in first read or even before the committee meets. If you see that kind of thing, please send it along to us. Does anyone else have any questions or suggestions? Heather?
So on the spectator policy, JJIBA, I was looking at number 5, refrain from any act that could be considered taunting, heckling, or berating of participants, officials, or coaches. I was wondering, because in Part 2, we were very specific about it being adult or student participant or other spectator. 5 does not include spectators. So, or the other thought is that 5 and 2 are similar things, that heckling, taunting, and berating are abusive language, and so it could be redundant.
So Heather, what we did there is try to honor the students' work, and we lifted it strictly from, you know, the work that the students and Andy did together. So it may be redundant, but we wanted to recognize all the effort that they put in.
You're not, if I'm understanding it, there might be a redundancy, but it's not confusing in terms of who it's addressing, because the overarching umbrella is spectator and parent expectations. So it's not confusing, we're not confusing the message on who we're speaking to through these expectations, correct?
It was more along the line of who it covered. So if we have a parent, and this has happened, if we have a parent that is taunting an opposing team's other parent in the stands, does that give us the right to eject them? Which of the two is it covered under? Because number 5 doesn't include spectators being rude to spectators, but since taunting, heckling, and berating is separate from angry or abusive language, which does cover adults being obnoxious to other adults in the spectators, I just wanted to make sure that was tight, I suppose. And it may just be being persnickety, but I didn't want somebody to say, well, I was just heckling them, and I was a spectator, so I'm not covered by number 5, right?
I don't think they're redundant, but I do think it's worth adding spectator to that number 5.
Or other spectators.
Yeah.
So that's an excellent point, and I think it makes it abundantly clear. The other way we could go is not list and just say anyone present, but I think, as Jim said, to honor the work that the students did, I think being specific is worthwhile, with the addition of spectators as not being targets. So we can add that.
I think that, you know, you have had a history of the board of an incredible respect for the students. So I think adding spectators, as Matt suggested, makes perfectly good sense. Heather, excuse me. And so I'd like to continue, you know, being that overt about our support of student work. So I think adding it would make sense, and it takes care of it. The kids worked a long time on this one, as they did on the anti-racism policy, as they did on the transgender policy, and you know, that's what another piece that makes our district unique, is we hear the kids.
Okay, any other, Matt?
Just getting back to the sabbatical form, since that's a form that doesn't require a policy committee, is that something the sabbatical committee could look to revamp and then bring back to us?
It would be done by administration. So I'm glad you asked that question, Matt, because I wanted to come back to it. Our documents, by definition, are not at the board prerogative, they're at management. So hearing Tom's suggestion, Suzanne will reframe the question, and it will be asked very closely to what Tom is suggesting on the form. So our documents are not adopted by the board because our documents tend to have to change with time. Policies are supposed to be more permanent, and so your policies are telling administration and staff what your belief system is and to adhere to it. Our documents are supposed to tie into the policy but allow administration to change. For example, if Tom had made that suggestion before this policy came up, Suzanne and I would have said, oh, that's really a good suggestion. Let's add that question to the form. We wouldn't have needed board approval to do that. So it's the flexibility of our documents that keep the policies alive.
Is it worth getting input from the sabbatical committee to hit Tom's overarching question about what is the purpose of the sabbatical, as opposed to just that specific question?
The sabbatical committee met and we go over all of that. That was one of the suggestions, was to, instead of beginning the committee when the applications come in, is to have pre-meetings to go over all of the questions, to go over the application, to go over the rubrics that are used. So we will continue to do that again this year as well.
That really is a complement to The students' input, the staff's input is valued, and we have a standing committee that Tom has served on, made up of educators that continuously refine this process.
Okay, any other suggestions? Okay, so, yes, sorry,
Just,
Gianna.
this is going back to the IHAM. The sentence that has parents, guardians who wish to review curriculum materials. To be nitpicky, would actually be curricular materials. But I have a question regarding, it's down, say, 1, 2, 3, 4. Within the opt-out procedure and form, with the second paragraph, the line "sufficient to meet state requirements for health education" is removed. And I want to know why.
Those changes came from the health teachers themselves? The health department and teachers reviewed this policy, and a majority of those changes came from them.
Okay.
Well, actually, all of them came from them.
All of them came from that.
The reason why I asked on that one was because under this policy may be given an alternative assignment, and then "sufficient to meet state requirements of health education" is removed. So is the idea there to give it more flexibility that the alternative assignment may not be part of the health curriculum, or what is that? I didn't understand what it meant.
So my understanding of this when I read it the first time, but we might need clarification, is that it was redundant because we're not allowed to offer an alternative assignment that does not meet state requirements. It would not be considered an adequate alternative. But I think it's an open question. If we're not sure about that, we can get that answer.
Suzanne, you met with the committee. Do you have feedback for us?
So I was trying to flip through while you were talking. So can you just tell me again exactly where you're referring to? Because
It's under it says opt-out procedure and form, and it's the second paragraph down, and it's the line that's in blue where it's crossed out. I just was looking to understand that one. Do you see it? Sufficient to meet state requirements for public health education. It's blue, and it's crossed out.
I think in the conversations, any kind of alternative assignment that we would be giving would have to meet state requirements. So it's redundant.
Good job, Dan.
And
Pretty much what Dan said.
yes.
Okay, and remember, this is first read. We do get another crack at this. Sorry, Tom?
Okay, yes, so we have a motion from Tom, a second from Matt, all in favor of approving the policies, the changes, 7 in favor, student rep is in favor. All right, those policies are approved for first read. Next, we are looking at specifically procedure, KFR1 facility fees, and because these are fees that the board approves, that's why they are before us. These fees we approve annually, correct? And I think what our understanding is that we want to, rather than trying, we're going to look at completely revamping them. But at this time, in order to meet that requirement of approving them, so to be able to approve them this year. Yes, Dan?
So I may be flaking. I thought we did this as part of unanimous consent at a recent meeting. And I haven't gone back to look, but with the understanding that we were obligated by policy to do an annual review, we needed to reapprove the standing list. However, with the understanding that it was in our board objectives that we would later do a thorough revision. I think we've done this already, but I don't know specifically when it happened. So I guess it wouldn't hurt to do it again.
That may be true, Dan, but we don't have a record of it.
Okay.
So we wanted to
August 16th in the unanimous consent facility use fee schedule.
Done.
As soon as you said it, I said, I think you're right.
I didn't either.
I got lucky. It was my first click.
All right, well, that takes care of that then. And we will look at revamping those later on. All right, so next, We have school board committee updates. Are there any additional committees? Anybody? Okay. None? Okay. Any public comments? No, I do not see any members of the public. So our closing actions now. So our October 4th meeting will now be at 6 p.m. So we'll make that change. And then October 18th is at the Mastway Cafeteria. So yes, and Wendy is usually very good about sending out little reminders to all of us so that we don't go to the wrong school.
Which one of us does anyway?
Raise your hand if you, yeah. And the other dates are on here. We do have a non-public meeting. So this is my first time doing this. Let's see if I can do this right. So I'm going to make a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2C, which is discussion of matters that are likely to adversely affect the reputation of a person other than a member of the school board. And the purpose of this is to discuss the superintendent evaluation. Can I have a second? And that Brian seconds, and this requires a roll call vote. So Tom?
Tom Newkirk, yes?
Brian Cisneros, yes.
Dan Klein, yes.
Denise Day, yes?
Matt Bacon, yes.
Heather Smith, yes?
Gianna Jalsa, yes.
All right, we will be going into non-public. Thank you, everyone.